and since she's a reporter, she was going around interviewing all the different people in Gensokyo. So it would be basically a 2-page spread. The first page would be the report that I actually wrote and published. The second part was basically the person from the person that she was interviewing berating her for saying, "Why did you cast this in this light?" But there's also, yes, the rebuttal. Very good. There's also a number of, places where he writes notes about music. There's also a number of comics submitted from various Touhou fan artists at that point. There's also Perfect Memento in Strict Sense, which was basically an encyclopedia written by the reincarnating little girl version of basically the original Japanese court historian, Hiena no Are. And since she's the 9th one, Dai Kyume, she's Hiena no Q. And so basically her job is to document all of the various mystical beings that appear in Gensokyo so that people know how to avoid them or defeat them or at any case meet them and not be horribly eaten. But she also makes the note that her job has changed a lot since it started because now that Gensokyo has become the way it is, this sealed off, wonderland, humans and yokai have started to learn how to live together. And so she'll actually know which of the various yokai are more friendly in various social interactions as well as which ones are more dangerous. The next big print project after that was a mixed media project which included 3 different works at the same time. The one that most people probably remember the best is Touhou Silent Sinner in Blue, which was the comic that was written by Akieta, the queen of the Touhou Yuri world. And so that basically followed the main storyline, if you will, where Yukari, having tried to fight the moon and lost against the power then, for some reason decides it's a good idea to try again, and so she's going around Gensokyo trying to convince people to help her fight the moon. And of course, Remelia, being a little bit full of herself, says, "This should be fun, let's do it." And so they use basically magic power to build a rocket, and they fly off to the moon, but they're not actually, it's not like a rocket. The point of the rocket is not to propel them into space, but to propel them across the barrier that separates the magical lunar capital, which is actually, more or less a place in a lot of Asian mythology, from the rest of the world. So they cross into that barrier, they go into the lunar capital, they meet the bunny girl legions of the Lunar Capital Defense Force, and eventually go up against their commander and lose really, really badly because she's pretty overpowered. And so, meanwhile, what they don't realize is that while they're occupied doing that, Yukari has Yuko sneak across the hole in the border that they've opened, sneak into the house of the lunar commanders and steal some very old and very expensive sake from them. Which was actually the whole point of the lunar invasion, just to get them back for 1,000 years ago. Because Yukari can be that petty if it suits her needs.
Also, the point about that series is that one of the more notable points in that series was the rocket they were going in was kind of designed a little bit haphazardly, and it was made out to be a home. And at one point, while they're in the middle of space, the maid, Remelia's maid, goes over to one of the windows
and opens it in deep space.
In space.
They're not really in deep space. They have 19th century scientific knowledge. What do you expect, really?
I think that's the point that everyone remembers about that series.
That's true.
Wasn't there something about the rocket's fuel too, so?
I don't remember.
Well, it was powered by.
That's terrible. You're terrible. Wait, was that a reference to how Akieta's circle is rocket fuel 21?
No.
Oh.
He means yes. That was entirely intentional.
Okay, I'll take credit for my unintentional pun.
Well, moving on, the second comic in that series was done by another Touhou fan artist. Oh, the writing for Silent Sinner in Blue was basically all done by Zun, and the art was all done by Akieta. For the second comic, the art and most of the writing was done by a different Touhou fan artist, and it's called In Above the Earth and Above the Moon, and it's basically 4-panel happy race and punishment fun time. Which is actually true. What happens is Racing ends up going to, kind of mirroring what the main characters in Silent Singer and Blue do in each episode, but kind of behind the scenes and different interactions with different people, and she gets punished a lot because it's a gag for a panel comic. The third work in the series was actually a set of short stories where Zune released one in a magazine every 3 months, and that's called Cage and Lunatic Renegade, and it's actually kind of a nice showcase of what makes Zune's work so interesting, because he uses it as an opportunity to fill in a lot of details behind the scenes of what's happening in the main storyline. So, for example, as things are going up, he has Eren Yagoko, the doctor character from the 8th Touhou game, one of the last bosses, reminiscing about her days back in the lunar capital and the various positions she had, and now people are saying there's some sort of war starting and who could be doing this. The fourth one was also really interesting because it tells the story of the extra boss of that 8th Touhou game, Fujiwara no Moko, who's supposed to be kind of the not very well loved daughter of an actual historical figure in Japan. And so she became immortal and she hates Kaguya, and so basically what she does is Kaguya and her try to kill each other, but they're both immortal, so they can't kill each other, but it's just this horrible vicious cycle. So it actually tells the story of how she became immortal and the events, the events that led up to that, the events after it, and how those experiences have, colored her view of what happens in the Touhou world. So it's kind of Zune at its finest. He isn't so much for writing these big, epic storylines, but he's good at taking a lot of really little pieces and fitting them together very nicely. And so, aside from that, there's also been the Grimoire of the Grimoire of Marisa, which is Marisa's encounters with all the spell cards that she has met throughout the games and tried to steal in some cases. See, there's also the Touhou 3 Fairies comic, 2 of which fairies we saw this weekend, but for some reason Luna Child is missing. But here's Star Sapphire. People who read Touhou will get that joke. If you do, you're a good person. And so basically this series of comics, which is just wrapping up, is about these 3 fairies which can control various forms of light and how light interacts with the world. And they use it to play pranks on people because they're fairies. But because they're fairies, they're kind of low on the Gensokyo feeding chain. So they're not really all that good at what they do, and they kind of get pranked themselves instead a lot. But all of that is basically stuff that Zune has either done himself or played a direct role in with writing or management or such. Most of it's done by him.
All right. So we talked a lot about the official works, and we want to revisit for a while, probably for the rest of the panel, about how the fan base is completely psychotic and the sheer volume of fan works that get produced. We have doujins, we have comics, we have fan arrange albums, and we even have full-blown fan games that run the entire gamut, from Mario games to Mega Man games to Saga Frontier style games. It's absolutely everything. You're probably going to find a Touhou something version of a game. I think at this point, in the finest demonstration of fandom being completely psychotic that we can provide, I think we should have Mizuki-san talk about himself for a little bit, if you don't mind.
わかりました。皆さん、はじめまして、水木仁と言います。皆さんに謝らなきゃいけないんですが、ここにいるのが孫さんじゃなくてごめんなさい。
He says he's very happy to be here. He's sorry not to be Zune.
僕は日本でピクシブという画像投稿サイトで毎日東宝の4コマを描いています。
So as you probably all know, Mizuki-san draws a daily, basically a diary comic, 4-panel comic that he posts every day on the Japanese image sharing site Pixel.
その内容は、主人公を多々小笠にして、その多々小笠は旦那で、嫁さんがこちやさないというキャラで、女同士なのに何も問題はないですよね。
And so the contents of this comic involve the main character, who is Kugasa Tatara, and the other main character is Sanai Kochiya. And in this comic, Kogasa serves as the husband and Sanae serves as the wife.
で、僕の日常を、その2人に投影して書いています。
And so he uses that setting to basically portray events that actually happened to him in his daily life.
内容は主に、小笠がバカなことをやって、早苗さんにいつもいじめられるということ。
And so, unfortunately, Kogasa is often bullied a little bit by Sanae in these comics.
それをピクシブに上げてるんですが、上げた数分後にはすでに段ボールに上げられているのをいつも確認しております。
And so, Mizuki-san himself uploads it up to Pixiv, but then often, and most of the time, very shortly thereafter, somebody sees it on Pixiv, uploads it to Danbor, and provides a translation.
この中で僕の読む本を読んだことのある人いますでしょうか。
So who here has read Mizuki-san's 4-panel comics?
ありがたいですね。Please call me taxi. ロサンゼルスに2000年の時に、旅行した時、タクシーが呼べなくて僕が発した言葉です。
That's talking about the time when, before he was here, he tried to call a taxi, and so he ended up having to run out.
いつも、夏と冬にコミックマーケット